Welcome to the Music Nut Program. I'm John. Thank you so much for joining me today. Welcome back to part three of my six-part series on my 10 favorite albums from a specific year, celebrating a significant anniversary. In January, I did my top 10 favorite albums from 1965. February, my top 10 from 1975. Today, March 1st, 2025, I will reveal my 10 favorite albums from 1985. 1985, a year I was getting really heavy into music, buying cassettes out the wazoo with my paper route money, getting a lot of cassettes for Christmas. And I've had a lot of bands or artists go in and out of my top 10 in the last 40 years or so. This is my top 10 as of today, March 1st, 2025. Let's get started. My number 10 is a band that I liked a lot back in high school. Fell off the track with them and got back into them when I saw them open for Wasp in 2022. And then I bought the whole catalog, and John Clauser and I reviewed their catalog on his YouTube channel, My Music Corner. I'm talking about Armored Satan, their second album, Delirious Nomad. This is just kick-ass, old school heavy metal. Many of these songs the band still played to this day, such as Long Before I Die, which is a smoking opening track, as well as Conqueror. Nervous Man is excellent. The Laugh is very, very cool. For the Sake of Heaviness is another strong track. Shout out to Butch Balak and he and his partner's channel with that same name. Aftermath is a wonderful epic. In the Hole is excellent. Released as the barn burning closing track. Very strong album from a band who has a very strong catalog. My number 10 is Armored Saint, Delirious Nomad. My number 9 is a band I knew about back in 1985. I didn't really get heavy into them until maybe around 2000 or so. It was my buddy Mark Divers who really got me into this band. And they only released 4 albums, but they released albums with singles on them as well. They put out a lot of singles that weren't on the proper albums, of course. One of the best bands to ever come out of the UK, I'm talking about the Smiths, with their second album, Meat is Murder. This album doesn't get the accolades that their follow-up, Queen is Dead, gets, but this is certainly very, very strong. Headmaster's Ritual is a wonderful opener. Russian Ruffians is killer rockabilly. I Want the One I Can't Have is great jangly pop. What She Said is a lot more fast-paced and riveting. That Joke Isn't Funny Anymore. It's another strong track with a great vocal performance from Morrissey. How Soon Is Now is probably the most famous song by the Smiths. It's been in a lot of television commercials. You hear it a lot on Sirius XM First Wave, Channel 33. If you have Sirius XM, Meat is Murder is the closer, which is very haunting in its execution. My number 9 is The Smiths, Meat is Murder. Number 8 is a band I only got into the last few years, and it was my friend Jack Wastamachia who got me into this band. Rest in peace, Jack. He made me a mix CD of them, and the last 6 months or 9 months, I've been listening to this band super heavy. And I'm going to have their whole catalog eventually. And it's a pretty large catalog. So we're going into the second album again for this band. It's New Model Army, No Rest for the Wicked. You may have heard me talk about them on the No Rest for the Wicked album war on this channel, the Music Nuts program. Now, this is a very riveting album from Justin Sullivan, a band. Frightened, Ambition are both fantastic opening tracks. Better Than Them is one of my favorite songs on here. Here the bass is really up in the mix, and it's a lot of acoustic guitars on here. Better Than Them is an excellent anthem, as well as My Country. That is wonderful. No Rest, just like the quasi title track. That's my favorite song on the album. one of my favorite songs from 1985, even if I hadn't heard it until just a few years ago. Drag It Down's another awesome track. Shot 18 is very riveting and poignant. The Attack is an acoustic closer, works very, very well. God, I going deep into this band this year. Right now, this is my favorite album by New Model Army. It's my number 8, No Rest for the Wicked. Number 7, this is a band I got into when they broke open with their album Too High to Die. And this is their third album. This was a genre jumping band when they were on SST Records back in the 1980s. I am talking about the Meat Puppets and their third album, Up on the Sun. But here they're going in a new wave direction, but they're making it those quirky sounds with their guitars, their bass guitars. Up on the Sun, fantastic title track that opens the album. Maiden's Milk is wonderful. It's a instrumental which eventually ends with a lot of whistling, but the bass lines and guitar lines on here are so killer yet catchy. Away is very catchy as well. Hot Pink is really cool. Swimming Ground is excellent. Enchanted Pork Fist is very heavy, and then it changes moods a lot. Two Rivers is a wonderful closer. The guitar sounds that Kirk was getting out of his guitar are wonderful. Creator is a fantastic closer. One of the best albums by the Meat Puppets. They have a pretty rich catalog. There's certainly a band I will be talking about in depth in the near future on the Music Nut program. My number 7 is the Meat Puppets, Up on the Sun. Number 6, this was an artist I loved back in 1985. I probably bought the cassette maybe a year after it came out. This gave this artist a ton of hits, which have aged very, very well. And I'm talking about John Cougar Mellencamp with his album Scarecrow. Now, this gave us huge hits with Small Town, ROCK in the USA. Those chords sound very familiar. As well as Lonely All Night, which was the first single, ran on the Scarecrow, was more topical. That was a hit for John as well. Rumble Seat was a minor hit. The deep cuts on here, I think, are very strong. Minutes to Memories is wonderful. I love Between a Laugh and a Tear, which is like a quasi ballad. Face of the Nation, Justice and Independence 85 or more, topical in scope. Kind of Fell I Am is a cool closer as well. Arguably my favorite album by John Cougar Mellencamp, either this one or The Lonesome Jubilee. It's my number 6. John Cougar Mellencamp, Scarecrow. Number 5 is a band I probably got into maybe 10 years ago or so. And I got to really get deeper into them. I only have 3 albums by them, but this is my favorite. And this band was industrial before we had a name for it, certainly when industrial music was more organic. And I'm talking about Killing Joke and their album Nighttime. Nighttime is best known for the wonderful Love Like Blood and the jarring and heavy 80s, which some people said that Come As You Are borrowed that guitar line from that song. The title track, though, is wonderful, as is Darkness Before Dawn. Kings and Queens is super catchy. Tabazan's is awesome. Multitudes, Europe. They're also outstanding tracks. This band doesn't get a lot of recognition in the United States. They opened for Tool a bunch of years ago here in the States. Darn, I wish I went to that show. But Killing Joke, another band I would get into heavy in 2025. They're my number 5 for 1985 with Nighttime. Number 4. Now, this is an album I knew of in 1985. I bought it in 1996 as a compilation. This is Jason. Oh, sorry. Jason the Scorchers. Two Sides of the Line is the name of the compilation. The album is called Lost and Found. This is a collection of their Fervor EP and the first LP, which was Lost and Found. This was called Cowpunk. Now, this was just not enough country to be country, not enough rock to be rock. You couldn't pigeonhole Jason as Scorchers. I think they kick ass and take names. Their whole catalog is very strong, and I'll be talking about them in the near future. But for when you had a lot of heavy metal out in 85, songs on here hit just as hard, and I think many times they got a lot more melody. Last time around is a kick-ass opener. White Lies rocks like hell, but it's very catchy. I really don't want to know. They slow down the tempo just a little bit, but what a sing-along chorus they got on that. Blanket of Sorrow, they bring in the fiddles, and it's more country, but it's very, very strong. Another great chorus. Shop It Around, another catchy, kick-ass rocker. Great version of the country standard Lost Highway on here, but they really speed it up. Still Tide is slower, but just as embracing. Broken Whiskey Glass is a great track. Change the Tune is a kick-ass closer. God, this band kicks ass and takes names. Jason the Scorchers, Lost and Found is my number 4. My number 3, I loved this band back in 85. I didn't buy the album still a little bit later. I was still in my big heavy metal phase, but I mean, I loved the singles off this album. And like 10, 15 years later, I discovered how great the album was. It's Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Chair. If you'd like to hear me talk more about Tears for Fears, please check out Bicycle Legs Talks Music, where Daniel Bosch, also known as Bicycle Legs, graciously asked me to come on and talk about Tears for Fears, and we ranked their catalog, which is an outstanding catalog. This was their biggest success in the United States. Shout, Timeless, song from 1985. Number 1, Everybody Wants to Rule the World. Same thing. That was the first single in the US. That also hit number 1. It's Timeless. I think they're two of the best singles from the 1980s. Head Over Heels has more of a new wave feel with those heavy synths in there. That hit number 3 in the States. Mother's Talk was heavy on the synthesizers. That was a minor hit here. That one was a lot more fast-paced and riveting. The slower tracks on here are wonderful. The Working Hour, I think, is astonishingly wonderful. I Believe is a wonderful ballad. Broken is very cool. Listen is another excellent closer. Talk about a lot of great albums with great closers on here. Fantastic album. It's my number 3 and my second favorite Tears for Fears album. My favorite, Seeds of Love, just like Daniel's. Number 3 for 1985 is Tears for Fears, Songs from the Big Chair. Number 2, this is now my Bon cassette in 1985. I knew this album from this band from the previous album. 40 years, this has been my favorite album by my favorite heavy metal band, except Metal Hearts, which was their 6th album. If you'd like to hear me talk more about Accept, please check out My Music Corner with John Clauser, where John and I reviewed the entire Accept studio catalog, all 17 albums. This was the band getting a little more accessible but still keeping our metallic crunch. The title track is a monster. Still played live to this day, usually near the end of the set. Midnight Mover was the very memorable video, but not for the greatest reasons, but catchy song. As is Screaming for a Love Bite. Up to the Limit is my favorite song by Accept. That is excellent, but we got a lot of heavier songs on here. Dogs on Leads is very heavy. Learn How to Survive is awesome. Living for Tonight is riveting. Bound to Fail, fantastic closer. Love the way that song ends with those soaring guitar lines, and from Wolf Hoffman, those great Teutonic backing vocals by the band. It is my number 2 for 1985, except Metal Hearts. My number one is a band I got into about 20 years ago when I was really getting into the college rock bands that I missed in 85 while I was listening to metal. This has been my favorite from 85 for quite a while now. And it's the Replacements and their album, Tim. This is where I think Paul Westerberg's songwriting really blossomed. You heard a lot of it on Let It Be from 84. That's a great album too. But this album is an easy 10 out of 10 for me. The most memorable song on here, there's quite a few. Left of the Dial is a song dedicated to the college rock bands that were only getting played on the left-hand side of the dial on FM radio. Bastards of Young is another popular song from the album. The video was very simple and effective. I believe this might have been the song they were playing on Saturday Night Live when they played quite drunkenly and were never asked back. Hold My Life is a wonderful, catchy opener. Kiss Me on the Bus is so melodic and killer. Dose of Thunder is heavier. Waitress in the Sky is near folk, but it's just very joyous. Swing and Party, they really slow the tempo down on this. Wonderful song. Wonderful vocal from Paul on it, too. Lay It Down Clown's a little heavier. Little Mascara is just great power pop. Here Comes a Regular. What a fantastic closer. It's kind of a melancholy song in its feel and its execution, but just a wonderful way to end a classic album. And again, I grabbed the wrong one. It is Tim by the Replacements, my number one for 1985. Honorable mentions. This was close. We're going to go three bands that begin with R. Rat, Invasion of Your Privacy. Lay It Down is killer. It's so easy to forget what you give is what you get. This is close. The last of a great run. Fantastic run, in my opinion, for Rush. Power Windows. The whole wide world, an endless universe. This was close. REM, Fables of the Reconstruction. Oh my God, this is a knockout of an album. It's just grown and grown on me over the years. If I do this in 2000, if I do this 10 years from now, maybe even next year, this might be in my top 10. And this fantastic band that I only got into about 20 years or so ago made two kick-ass albums in 1985. My favorite of the two is Husker Du, New Day Rising. Also like Flip Your Wig. Other honorables, let me go to Notepad and I will read them off for you. I'll give you the three live albums first. Y&T, Open Fire. Great single live album. It should have been a double. Iron Maiden, Live After Death. Love that album. What a great selection of tracks on there, including hitting some tracks from the first two albums with Paul Di'Anno. Scorpions, Worldwide Live. This album really proves how fantastic a live band they were. And the songs that were originally on Blackout really get a big kick on here, especially Dynamite and Can't Live Without You. Very, very strong live album. Also, Anthrax, Spreading the Disease, Sting, Dream of the Blue Turtles. How often does someone go from Anthrax into Sting? It's a Nick Cave and the Bad Seeds. The Firstborn is Dead. Megadeth, Killing Is My Business. Business is good. Minutemen, Three-Way Tie for Last. Big Audio Dynamite. This is Big Audio Dynamite. Stevie Ray Vaughan and Double Trouble. Soul to Soul. Aerosmith. Done with Mirrors. The only EP I have in here, and it is a killer. Fishbone, self-titled EP. Saxon, Innocence, It's No Excuse, When They Really Went LA. It's still a pretty good album. Jesus and Mary Chain, Psycho Candy, Tom Waits, Rain Dogs, John Fogerty, Center Field, Keel, The Right to Rock. That was a pretty good band. Last but certainly not least, band I love. I'm going to talk about this band in the near future. Kicks. Silly Rabbit. Kicks are for kids. Midnight Dynamite. Very strong hard rock album from 1985. So, what are your favorite albums from 1985? Do you like any of the albums that are in my top 10? Do you think that my honorables are better than my top 10? Please place your thoughts in the comments. I'd really love to see your list and some of your choices. Thank you so much for joining me today. Just to give you a heads up on some future appearances. It's Chris Whitley Wednesday. Will continue on Wednesday, March 5th, 2025, when I review Chris's eighth album from 2003, Hotel Vast Horizon. Also, I will be doing some album war and album after shows here in the near future. I recently appeared on Slogan's Rock and Metal Extravaganza, where we finished up their Cinderella series. It was with Logan and Sydney and Danny Akana, and we reviewed Cinderella's last album, Still Climbing, from 1994, as well as Tangier's album from 1989, Four Winds. So, again, thank you all so much for joining me today. Please give your thoughts in the comments on your favorite albums from 1985. Until I see you again, do what you love, and I'll talk to you soon.